a day off. I don't eat in between no matter what. And I'm so grateful to be here. It's been a long time since I've told my story, so I'm really glad to have the opportunity. My abstinence date is April 12th, 1985. So I have been abstinent a long time, a day at a time, and it has made all of the difference. I can't even imagine what my life would have been like if I had not gotten abstinent when I did. And it's entirely possible that I wouldn't even be alive because I was on such a self-destructive path. I was really spiraling down, and I'm very, very, very grateful that I found the Gray Sheet. So, just a quick story. So, I was only 19 when I got abstinent. So, it did feel though like a lifetime of compulsive overeating occurred in those 19 years. I really can't remember ever having a normal relationship with food. It always loomed much larger in my life than it does for someone who is not a compulsive overeater. I was conscious of being overweight by the age of 6. That's when I went on my first diet. And I just knew that, I was a food-seeking missile. I mean, I always was conscious of food. It was the first thing I was aware of whenever I got any place. Was there any food here? What was the food? And I always wanted more food. I always wanted all the food. So really, when I think about the various components of the Gray Sheet, they are so perfectly designed for the illness that I have, because the Gray Sheet puts two kinds of boundaries on us with our food. One is the amounts that we eat, and the other is the foods that we eat, the specific foods that we eat. And both of those things are crucial because I tried restricting amounts and I tried restricting foods. And if I didn't do both of those things, it never worked. I really, really had to do both. And only the Gray Sheet has given me the peace that I need. So anyway, I have a long childhood history of dieting, yo-yoing. I went on a number of successful diets. And for a long time, I was able to do that. I was able to go on diet campaigns. I had a very successful bout with Weight Watchers when I was 13. I was the youngest person at Weight Watchers. And I got all this affirmation for being there and doing this. But what always would go wrong is when I tried to add food back into my diet. And that's really one of the many things that tells me that I belong here, and that I can't go back out and try to eat, quote unquote, normally, whatever that is, which I just don't even know. Because when I would lose all the weight that I wanted to lose, and then I would slowly try to add back the foods, it would just start the same spiral. Because if I ate one, I wanted more. And I just got to the point where I couldn't even get one day together of abstaining from foods that I was trying to avoid. Things got exponentially worse when I got to college, because I was all of a sudden in a position where there were literally no restraints on my behavior. I had had a little freedom in high school, actually, because I lived at a boarding school with a dining hall where, it was all you could eat, and you can imagine what that was like. For me, I would get there at 5 o'clock when the dining hall opened, and then I would stay till 7 when it closed, and I would sit through several groups of friends who would sit down at the table. And I was eating the whole time. So that was already bad. But when I got to college, I didn't even have to be in the dorm at a certain time of night. And that's when the night eating really got bad. That's when I would go out from my dorm at a bad hour. I mean, I've since heard the expression, nothing good happens after 2 a.m., or, you can fill in. And I firmly believe that. But for me, what I was out there doing was eating. Other people may have been up to other stuff. I was eating. I was going to one of the two 24-hour stores that were within 2 blocks of my dorm, which you can just imagine. Oh my God, that was just horrible. I could always get food, so I did. You know, I was out in at the night, you know, with the people who were out at night, in a not so nice part of a gritty urban area where my school was located. I saw all kinds of stuff, and I did not belong there, but I did belong there. You know, that was me. I was doing that stuff. There were two separate occasions when I was in college when I was actually locked out of the place I was staying because I went out to get food, and then, you know, the door locked behind me, or I didn't have a key, or whatever it was. And I was so humiliated that I didn't like call or try to get back in or whatever, because why was I out there? You know, I couldn't bear to confess I went out to get food in the middle of the night. So I literally walked the streets all night. And I did this 2 separate times, really, really close to a bottom for me. And then as soon as like the first restaurant opened, I was in that restaurant getting more food. So that's what I did. And, you know, I don't have a history of bulimia because I didn't learn how to do it. You know, and this is, it's a not yet for me, the bulimia, because I tried to throw up because I was in so much pain from the ridiculous amounts of food that I put in my body, but I wasn't able to trigger the vomiting. I have since been to a lot of GreySheet meetings, and I've heard a lot of stories, and I bet you I would be more successful if I tried it again. So, you know, this is why I really am, you know, I'm very serious about, on a daily basis, doing what I need to do to be abstinent, because there's a lot worse even out there than I experienced. And I didn't like what I went through, and I don't want to go through worse. So, so that was college. It was really, really tough. I was trying to keep up my academics, cared a lot about my schoolwork, but it was very, very difficult while I was in the midst of such incredible personal dysfunction. And everything in my life was chaotic and ridiculous. You know, I got involved in, you know, dating relationships that were just ridiculous. I was involved in very dysfunctional, toxic extracurricular activities. I just had, my life was a complete mess. So much of a mess. I mean, I think back on it now, and I mean, it's just, God love me. I mean, I don't know how I made it. I really don't know how I made it. Nothing in my college career, the first 2 years, would have predicted that today I would have a semi-sane life. I was just a hot mess. So how did I get to GreySheet? I knew there was an OA. I don't know how I knew. I can't remember how I found out that there was an OA. So I called. Well, I mean, a crucial thing to say is my parents were in AA at the time. And so I knew that there was a program that existed. So maybe it's through that I found out that OA existed. So I looked up OA in the phone book, I believe, because back in the 80s, that's what you had to do. There was no internet. And there was a phone number, and I called it, and there was a meeting that was a few blocks from my dorm. And wonder of wonders, this was a GreySheet meeting. And so I got to a meeting, and they were doing the GreySheet, and I had been exposed to other OA where there was other food plans out there, and you picked one. But I went to this one, and they're like, no, this is the plan. Like, here we do this one, we don't do others. And I really kind of knew right away that of all the food plans one could pick, this was the one for me, because I knew deep in my bones that carbohydrates and sugars were my problem. They were definitely my problem. I was drawn to these foods like no other foods. I even looked at the list of which absent foods we could eat, like even things like, you know, fruit like which ones are on the gray sheet, which ones aren't on the gray sheet. And I just knew in my bones, yeah, I get that. Because there were certain fruits I would binge on. So, I cannot be trusted with a slightly sugary fruit. I just can't, like that's how serious this is, for me. So I also knew that weighing and measuring was going to be very important, because when I tried simply controlling my food, with what I ate and didn't, measure it, I was very soon like eating more and more and more and more. So I knew I needed to weigh and measure. And so the gray sheet did that. Now, I would love to say that I was successful the first time I tried gray sheet, but I was not. I was not ready to surrender. I got, I don't know how far into a couple of weeks, and I hit some sort of rough patch, and I went out again. And it was probably 9 or 10 months till I came back. And really what did it, the thing that led me to come back, was actually something significant, in my personal life. After all of that just terribly dysfunctional, dating experience, I met a guy, and that was it. This was the guy. And I really fell deeply, deeply in love for the first time ever. And I knew that if I did not get my food in order, this relationship was going to die, because I was going to ruin it. And so that's what drove me back to GreySheet. And, that is my story. That is my honest story. That's why I came back to GreySheet. And I had a deeply personal spiritual experience. I got a couple of days in to weighing and measuring again, and I went out. And what happened was I went out, I got a food we don't eat, I brought it home, and I had bought myself a magazine to read while I binged, because that's what I did to distract myself from the reality of what I did. And so what happened was I got this magazine. It wasn't even a magazine I really liked. It was just what was there. And I finished the magazine before I finished the food. And there I was, just me and the food. And by this point, the guy had actually left the country. He was going to be gone for a year, and I was missing him. It was terrible. And just like, oh, my life was just awful. And I was just sitting there, the reality of the food. And I had this spiritual experience where God told me, my higher power told me, I didn't have to do this. I could stop doing this today. And by the grace of God, I have not eaten compulsively since. And I'll stop there,